Greetings, food lovers everywhere, and welcome to Eat Train Talks. I'm Eat Train, a 13-year-old literacy advocate, book lover. I founded a nonprofit, Eat Train Talks Inc. And, the main goal of my literacy journey is to celebrate one thing, and that's diversity in middle grade. And today, I get to do just that. My guest is no stranger to Eat Train Talks. I've been lucky enough to have him on my show in the past. His debut novel, The Civil War of Amos Abernathy, won the 2023 Golden Kite Award, and his first two stories were finalists for the Lambda Literary Award for middle grade literature. Let's take a moment to let that sink in because this guy, he's amazing. He is awesome, and I'm so thrilled to welcome back the author of his new story, The Truth About Triangles. This is my interview with Michael Leali. Woo!
Thank you, E-Train. That is such a wonderful welcome. I appreciate you so much. I'm thrilled that we get to chat again. I adore your podcast, and the work that you're doing is so necessary and important. And I mean this so sincerely. You are such an inspiration to me and to so many others out there. So thank you for all you do.
Yeah, you do incredible work when it comes to your writing, when it comes to your promotion of diversity. And as this is Pride Month, which, should be every month, it is every month. So one theme that I found to be really powerful in your new story, Michael, was the theme of divorce and separation and how they greatly impacted the life of your protagonist, Luca. It's a deeply important message that I feel needs to appear more in middle grade. Just the emotions felt throughout separation and the worries felt as well. So how did you go about writing this intense topic in a way that kids don't just relate to, but empathize with?
Such a great question. And you do ask such fabulous questions.
Thank you.
This was a tough one to write because it was inspired by so much of my lived experience. My parents divorced when I was in my 20s, and my youngest sibling and I were 11 years apart. And so she was in middle school when they divorced. And I had a lot of different feelings, and watching her go through it and then experiencing the changes that makes in a family. We're still a family, but it looks a lot different now. Really got me thinking about family structures and the impact that it has on young people. And I was a teacher for almost a decade, and I've seen students go through all sorts of different family situations, from separations to divorce, and it can really take a toll on a kid's mental health and the way that they view themselves, the way that they feel secure within their home or their community. And for me, I wanted to really respectfully explore what that looks like from the child's perspective and how it impacts not just the child, but the family as a whole. And so when it came time to craft Luca's parents and his siblings and the way that their family sort of implodes, I did a lot of looking at the world around me, at the feelings that I felt, even as a 20-something. It really had a dramatic impact on me when my parents separated. And so I used a lot of memories, I used a lot of conversations, and it felt good to write it because while divorce can be really sad, I think that there's also a lot of hope that comes after that. Divorce is the end of something, but it's not the end. It doesn't finalize who we are, what we do, and it does not mean the end of a family. It's just the transitional time for a family to look different and feel different.
All right, so Luca feels like he has to carry the entire world on his shoulders. He thinks that it's his job to repair friendships, repair his family, which he feels is broken, and he thinks he has to manage the family pizza restaurant all by himself. He feels like it's his job to maintain everything. And he has to tend to the wounds of others, at least he feels that he has to, but he doesn't really tend to his own wounds. He puts other people's needs and happiness first, his own last. Luca's character shows how stressful it can be to your health and happiness by putting everyone else before yourself. And while it's important to empathize, to be kind to others, your own mental health, self-love, that's just as important, if not more important. So I would say that The Truth About Triangles dives really deep into these mental health issues. And I guess my question for you is, why did you feel highlighting Luca's anxiety and need to fix everything and everyone was so important to you? Why was it so important to include in the story? And do you think that there need to be more books about mental health awareness?
Yes, absolutely. I really appreciate that you've brought this up and that this is one of the questions at the forefront of the list of things you wanted to talk about because it's so much of what this story grapples with. Oh, so much of what I write comes from who I am and things that I've experienced. And I'm a people pleaser. I often am thinking about how I can make everyone else's life easier
Hmm.
than my own. And more times than I can count, my own sense of worth, my own sense of happiness was sacrificed so that, at least in my mind, other people were happy. And one of the things that I've really learned is that you can't really make other people happy
Right.
and you can't control how they feel or how they're going to react to something. And so the best thing we can do is live authentically and really think about chasing our own happiness, but doing that in a way that is conscious of how other people feel.
Hmm.
But I didn't know that as a young person. And so Luca's experience is really what I experienced throughout my sixth, seventh, eighth grade years in particular. And I'm the oldest of four children. And I often felt like it was my job to help keep the household running and make sure that my siblings were on task or they were taken care of. And it's a lot, it's a lot of work for a parent, two parents to raise children. And for me, I never wanted to feel like a burden. I never wanted to need anything. But that's just not reality. We all need things, but especially young people. And we have parents and guardians and trusted adults for a reason, people that we can go to when life gets too tough. And there's a reason that there's this child and adult separation.
Hmm.
But sometimes those lines get really blurry, and sometimes the adults in our lives also forget that there are those boundaries. And for Luca, which is what also happened to me, my parents started to see me as this responsible person and that I could take on more tasks and chores and help out with my siblings. And so more was given to me. But what they didn't realize, and what I didn't really articulate either until I was older, was how much of an impact that had on me. And that it got really hard for me to take care of myself in that process. So for me, this is giving voice to the seventh grader that I used to be. And I saw a lot of this in my classrooms in the past few years, especially after 2020 and the pandemic. And families really rallied around each other
Hmm.
to ensure that life continued on as normally as possible. But I also found that a lot of young people took on many additional responsibilities. And that's a huge ask and a huge challenge because, as I'm sure you know, it's tough to be a kid. It is
Right.
tough to be a young adult. There's already so much on your plate. And I think, as much as possible, the adults in young people's lives should be trying to lift you up and make sure that you get to figure out who you are and what you want out of life without any extra feelings of needing to do something.
Absolutely. I love that answer. And you're right. Being a kid, it might not seem hard to adults in your life and just adults in general, but it can be really tough, especially in these middle school years. I know firsthand that there's bullying, there's crushes, there's so much going on. And while as an adult you might not feel like those sorts of things like truly mattered, as a kid that's your whole life. And then adding on,
Mm,
as you said, these extra responsibilities that can just be really a really tough toll on your mental health and your mental well-being. So it's great that you brought that up in your answer and in your story as well.
thanks. And yeah, I just totally hear what you're saying. And I'm so glad you're giving voice to this too.
Thank you. So I mentioned that your story includes mental health issues not found in middle grade often, but that's not the only interesting topic you run into your story, which is just what I love. It's multi-layered. And all right, so let's get to what I like to call, and what the proper term is, a love triangle. That's right. In middle grade, there was a love triangle between Luca, his best friend June, and his crush Will. And I have to say, I mean, you kept me on my toes. You kept the reader in suspense. I loved it so much. And I was a lot of the times when I read a middle grade book, because I've read so many, I just sort of no, oh, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. But I did not feel
Mm.
that way with the truth about triangles. I was on my toes and on the edge of my seat. So I guess my question for you is, um, well, having Luca and his BFF June crushing on the same boy, I mean, that's quite a twist. And I'm really glad that you introduced this love triangle. So I
Mm.
guess, was this written with anyone in mind, or was it sort of crafted from your imagination?
Great question. And also, thank you. That is like a huge compliment because you are one of the most well read young people that I've ever encountered. And so to get that I kept you on the edge of your seat means a lot. Um, I think a lot about romantic feelings and crushes for young people, but especially young queer people. And
Hmm.
I think the way that we can experience crushes is a little different sometimes from the straight community. And so for me, this is also derivative or derived from an aspect of my life. When I was in fifth grade, I had this incredible friend who was a girl and total tomboy. I was just obsessed with her, and she really got me out of my shell. I was a very, very quiet kid, and I liked to be like in my room reading a book, do not disturb. That's all I wanted to spend my time doing. But she had me out rollerblading. We like built ramps and we were riding our bikes off these ramps, going fishing. We're on our trampoline all the time. And I couldn't quite figure out what I was feeling in that friendship. If I was like, should I have a crush on this girl? I'm a boy. I'm supposed to like girls. But I didn't quite feel that. And then this new boy moved in, and I had even more complicated feelings because he was really cool and I wanted to hang out with him, but the two of them did not get along at all. So I did something to kind of, I thought, help make sure that I could hang out with these two people who I thought were awesome. And I played matchmaker in fifth grade, and I let them know that they both liked each other. And they did, in fact, like each other, but they dated for all of, 2 weeks. But what that did was it kind of showed them that they had more in common than they thought. And so the three of us hung out. We were like the best of friends. We had this magical golden summer of just the three of us. And I thought a lot about the dynamics of that relationship. And so I used it as inspiration for Luca, June, and Will. But I decided to flip it on its head a little bit and really lean into June not liking Will at first. And then also thinking about how I felt like as a young queer person, I needed to manipulate things, or I had to hide the real feelings that I had. And I kind of put them on other people or tried to manipulate the situation, which isn't right and it isn't good because we can't actually control how other people act or behave or what they think.
Right.
And I want to kind of use this as a little bit of a cautionary tale. Like, I think the best course of action is always to be honest and always to be upfront about what you're thinking and feeling, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels scary. And that's something I hope and wish Luca could learn throughout his own journey.
Absolutely. And I just gotta say it again, you did an incredible job with that. And, I love the theme of honesty because it's hard to be upfront with your feelings. It's hard to, admit, especially to a crush, just how you feel. And, you do a great job of that. Great job of building up the characters. And I grew to love them. And yeah. So, of course, there's a lot more to the truth about triangles than just these two themes and two messages that I've talked about. It shares the story of a family fighting to honor their Italian heritage. So all the while though, Luca, he desperately wants to add his own personal touch to their history and to their present. So
Mhm.
he creates and shares his new amazing pizza recipes, but his mom won't listen or support his new ideas. I'm done with spoil. That's not a spoiler, everybody. It's on the back cover.
It's true.
Yeah. Don't worry. Don't worry. So I guess why was it important for you to include this struggle in the story, and what do you hope readers will take away from it?
So for me, my Italian American heritage is a huge part of my life. The majority of my family is Italian, and most of my great grandparents emigrated from Italy. And I grew up with a lot of Italian language and culture, music and food and jokes and stories from the past and what my ancestors had to do to come to America. And for me, this really is me trying to honor some of those stories. And, you know, my grandparents and my parents, and now me, we've all been born in America. And the way that traditions and culture evolve changes with each generation.
Mhm.
And I find that for myself, I want to learn as much as I can and I want to honor the past, but I'm also trying to figure out what Italian American heritage looks like today. What does it look like for me? How do I get to make my mark on this culture that matters so much to me? And just like language, just like stories, just like anything in the world, everything is constantly evolving. And Luca is really grappling with what matters from the past and how to instill himself in this present moment and make sure that he's seen and heard and loved and respected. And part of that is taking the food that he cares about, that his grandmother really showed him how to foster and make it his own at the same time. Um, and so for me, that was just a really essential thing to explore and talk more about.
Yeah. And I think it's so great that you didn't just, include heritage, but you also, like as you mentioned, Italian American heritage. And that's a family, it's a topic that's not really discussed and brought up much in middle grade. I mean, we've seen so many different heritages, but Italian American, and you did an incredible job, firstly, of incorporating it into your story, but also representation. You just added so much in your book, whether it's LGBTQ plus or just Luca, all sides of him, all parts of him, all that makes him him, I guess.
Hmm,
So my next
thank
question for
you.
you is, I've often heard that writing, it can be a great form of therapy and healing. It can be therapeutic and you learn more about yourself and find peace in your past experiences. Thus, I have two parts to this question. Firstly, do you feel the experiences Luca went through related heavily to your own? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but is there any more you can add? And secondly, did you find yourself healing throughout the writing process?
Uh, yes, to both. And I'll expand to Luca. While he's not me at all, we share so many qualities.
Mhm.
And I'm definitely a foodie person. I love cooking. I love baking. I love pizza. And the sad part is that in over the last year and a half, I've given up both gluten and dairy. So my attachment to pizza has had to change significantly. So it's been terrible timing for the release of this book. But the great news is that there's a lot of really good gluten-free and dairy-free options in the Bay Area for pizza. Um, but yeah, like his love for food, his family, his need for his family to be whole is something that I felt so much as a young person. That was one of my worst fears, was that my family would kind of fall apart, or that my parents wouldn't stay together. And it was something that eventually came true. And I think with some adult perspective and time and distance, one of the messages that I really want young people to hear is that it will work out. You will be okay. And that really difficult things can happen. And there is an after. There isn't just this finality. And I love your second question, writing as therapy. And I do find it to be a very healing thing. All three of my books have grappled with different things that I've struggled with throughout my life, from coming out as gay to figuring out if I'm, quote, boy enough, or really mental health struggles that I've had. I've dealt with both depression and anxiety in really big ways throughout my life. And all three of my books grapple with these ideas and issues. And so the more that I write, the more I explore, and the more that I honestly get to talk with people like you and other readers in the world, the better I feel about how I'm moving forward. And it also feels like I'm getting the chance to help other people ask questions and realize things and see themselves in the stories that I write. And I think that in that shared community, we can all find healing. And I think that's one of the greatest powers of storytelling, is that we get to share an experience.
What is your favorite pizza topping of all time? And secondly,
Mm-hmm.
a delicious question in itself, are you or your family huge pizza fans? You talked about it a little bit, how you have gluten-free, dairy-free options now, but does pizza just hold a super special place in your heart? Is it your favorite food?
Okay, so many good questions. I do. I love pizza. I still love pizza. My partner and I have pizza most Fridays. Um, Cauliflower crust. There's a lot of like really good ways to do this. But for me, I think my favorite pizza topping, it's one of the most common. It's so simple. I love pepperoni. I just love it. Um, and for me, pizza really does hold a special place in my heart. My great grandma Sarah, who passed on when I was a teenager, she made the best homemade pizzas. And when I say homemade, she made everything homemade: the dough, the sauce, the Italian sausage. Every step of it was her own creation. And the way that she made pizza was unlike anything I've ever seen. And actually, I use a part of her recipe in the book. She put potatoes into the dough. And so when the dough came out, she would make it on these like cookie sheets. And it was more like a focaccia bread. It was a thick dough, but it was so moist and it was so airy. And there was just a light covering of pizza sauce and then a little bit of mozzarella and maybe Parmesan cheese, and then lots of herbs. And then she would put her homemade Italian sausage on that. And for me, those are some of my favorite memories from being a really little kid. My great grandma making these pizzas, and it was like a day long process to get it all made. And then she would cut out like these big squares, and we would just sit around and we could eat them like potato chips. And by the end of eating like an entire pizza, you wouldn't feel so good. But it was absolutely worth it. And so for me, although she really made her pizza like the slices were more rectangular or square, um, I really wanted to honor that and bring pizza to the forefront of this book.
I love that. And pizza is probably my favorite food. There's so many different variations, and I guess I'm also curious, on a pizza related note. Luca, he has so many different types of pizza that he creates. Did you personally try all the recipes yourself, or did you find them online? How did that work?
So I haven't tried any of them.
Oh, really? Yeah.
No, but they're all inventions from my own brain. I thought a lot about different flavor combinations. I'm a huge like Top Chef fan. I love the show Chopped. And so I thought a lot about like the different recipes I've seen and sort of decided just like put different things together. I thought what would work is like a good base for a dough, and then different ways to think of sauces and toppings, and just kind of let my imagination run wild. But there is a pizza towards the end of the book, the arancini pizza, that I would love to make. And it is on my to-do list to find a way to make that because I think it would be absolutely delicious.
I love that. And from your book, I have so many new combinations to try with pizza, and I'm working on my cooking, so hopefully everything turns out great. I'm going to try to make some tonight. I'm very excited.
Ooh, awesome. An E-Train pizza party.
Yeah. So, my next question for you is one that I've really started incorporating into a lot of interviews, and this is one that I love. So, if you could choose one song that best represents the truth about triangles, what song would it be and why?
Okay. I'm gonna cheat. I've got two songs.
That's fine. Okay.
I'm going old school
Ooh.
Dean Martin. That's Amore.
I
Because
knew
I feel like it's going to play in every pizza restaurant. And the other one that I love that my family comes on, we're all dancing around, is Mambo Italiano. And they're just two of my favorites. But I do think That's Amore really captures a lot of the crushing romantic vibes, but it is so much about food at the center of that song, it just feels like the perfect fit.
I love that. Those are perfect answers. I had a feeling that Tamora would come up, but you know, no bets were made on this. No money, no was legally spent, but I had
Hmm.
a feeling. So,
Good call. Well done.
so I am really glad that we're talking during Pride Month because your stories celebrate LGBTQ plus themes and characters as well. So, in their own special and unique way, all your stories are kind of created. From the Civil War of Amos Abernathy, which I absolutely adore, all of you need to read it, to Matea, which same sentiment, and Truth About Triangles, which I love as well. They're all incredible, but they're all unique as well. While they tackle LGBTQ plus characters and themes of the same sorts, they all have their unique way of being written and styles. So, how does it feel knowing your books are being read and loved by kids who might otherwise not really have the chance to see themselves in the stories that they read? And is that sort of motivation for you?
It feels incredible knowing that these books are out in the world. I'm so grateful that these stories exist, that I got the chance to write them. They are books that I desperately needed when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 20. I wish that I could have seen myself on the page in this way. And to know that other young people are feeling seen and heard gives me a sense of hope for the future. It's still a pretty tough time right now for the LGBTQ plus community. There's a lot of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation that is happening, a lot of bills that have been passed or that are on their way to being passed, so much censorship. Our trans community, the non-binary community, and in particular, our queer uh, people of color are really being impacted. And I want more stories out in the world. I want more people to feel seen and recognized through literature and through TV and film and songs. And I feel like each day we are getting closer and closer to that. So I'm just really grateful that I get to be a part of this larger movement of diverse storytelling that is about queer characters, but isn't necessarily completely revolving around coming out or the trauma that can exist around being a part of the LGBTQ plus community. And that's, I think, one thing I'm really proud of with The Truth About Triangles. He's gay, but the story isn't about him being gay. It's
Yeah,
about him figuring out who he is in his own family, how to chase his own dreams and passions, and what it means to experience a first crush, which is for so many people a thing that you experience as a young person.
absolutely. And I think before stories like yours, when it came to Pride Month, like you said, it was about the tough parts of being gay and LGBTQ plus, but they didn't really put the pride in pride. But now, like, because they
Mm,
talk about all the tragedies, but now there's so much joy, so much pride in the stories that are being created. And like you said, it's not about being gay. It's just about, growing to love yourself, growing to learn about yourself, learning about your dreams in life that don't have to be related to who you like, what you look like, what your gender or
mhm,
orientation is. Just being authentically you. And I love that about your stories.
mhm.
So,
Thanks.
my final question for you is you've published three wonderfully meaningful, thoughtful, and also, as I mentioned earlier, very different middle grade stories. But the big question is what's next? Is there anything in the works, or are you bringing some, are you finding some needed rest and relaxation like Luca might need in his mind?
Mm. I love that you've incorporated this question of rest into what we're talking about. I am trying to find a better balance of work and rest. And I've been in a season of being able to rest a little bit more. So I'm really excited to get more stories out in the world, but continuing to find that balance. I can't say too much about what I'm working on next, but um, I'm working on a lot of fantasy projects, both middle grade and young adult. And I have a couple other young adult projects that I'm working on. And so I'm trying to branch out and explore new ages to write for. And I'm really, really excited about what might come next. So stay tuned. Nothing that I can officially share yet, but I'm very excited about the future.
Well, now I'm on the edge of my seat because I cannot wait to see what you write in the future. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And, could be YA, could be picture books, could be another middle grade, could be an adult book. Anyway, I just loved meeting you virtually a second time. And who knows, maybe when your new books come out, you could be the first 3-timer on E-Train Talks. You never know.
That would be amazing.
That'd be very fun for me. And for you as well, hopefully. So,
oh yeah.
Always more going on in our lives between discussions, and you certainly have done a lot. You've had a new book released, you've moved across the country pretty much, and I'm sure there's so much more going on. And, I'm just going to start singing That's Amore in my head now after this interview. I love
Me too.
Yeah, I love this talk. Thank you so much. And everybody, I always say keep on reading. Well, today, keep on reading The Civil War of Amos Abernathy, The Truth About Triangles, Mateo, which my arm has sadly been blocking, but I need a little room. But let me shine it up. Let me shine it right here. Show it off to everybody.
Ooh, perfect.
This is not the finished copy, but as you can see.
Yeah, you got a special bound manuscript.
Ooh, yeah, it's just as special, just as beautiful. And yeah, the honor is truly an honor for me, and I hope that I see more books of yours in the future saying Michael Leali on the cover, and I cannot wait for everything that comes with your writing. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, E-Train. You are awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. You are just this powerhouse for good, and the world needs it more now than ever. Keep fighting, keep speaking, keep reading. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the incredible authors out there who are, fighting for good, writing for good. Hey, that rhymes. So yeah, thank you so much again. And to everybody watching, keep reading, stay safe, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.